So this thing is 307 pages. Like, maybe you get to watch the speech or see it on the news. We actually have to go through this thing. And over the years, this thing has gotten bigger and thicker and takes a little longer.
It's enthralling.
Yes. So we're looking at a $6.7 billion deficit, which is consistent with the announcement that the finance minister made about a month ago.
3 weeks ago,
where
he was suggesting it was going to be up to 1% of GDP.
And GDP being about 800 billion, so the media, and it was the media, sorry media friends, who immediately took it to there's going to be an $8 billion deficit. So by comparison, the SUSA deficit looks relatively modest. It's still $6.7 billion, but it's not as big as the people were led to believe. We're on revenues of 152.2 billion, expenditures of 158.5 billion. Healthcare, I saw, creeped over this. I think it's over the $60 billion mark now, but we'll send our health clients more details on it. So the provincial accumulated debt, when we add up all of these deficits, and they talk about net debt, so we'll keep it on that one.
They use a few different calculations on this, but yeah, the net debt is the one that we'll work with.
So it's $325 billion now. Yeah. That's a lot of money.
I don't have that.
Me neither.
Yeah.
And the interest payments on that, and again, for people who may not know, when we talk about budgets, it's for the fiscal year that is beginning April 1st, 2018, and ends on March 31st, 2019. That's what all of this activity was about today. So the interest payments on that $325 billion of debt in this coming fiscal year will be $12.5 billion. It's about $1 billion a month. That's a lot of money that's not available for social programs and for infrastructure and other investments.
It's one of the larger actual expenditures from the province. I think, if I remember correctly, it's the third largest category
after health and education
that we're spending money on.
It is, and I guess when you're doing things like pharmacare and like childcare and the education enhancements, somebody has to pay. Now, education is largely the hiring of additional teachers, specialists, child and youth workers, educational assistants.
Although this budget also contained details about a substantial number of billions of dollars in infrastructure money, capital grants to refurbish and improve schools.
Oh yeah, schools did real well and hospitals did real well on the infrastructure side, but I guess the choice is, do we let people, individuals, buy their own childcare, or do we buy it for them? And is it really a question of debt transfer? I mean, I saw a stat that says in Toronto, one child could cost parents $17,000 a year in childcare.
Well, as someone who has recently experienced childcare costs, by no means was I sending my son to the cheapest daycare out there, but that would be very light compared to a lot of people I knew, who what I was paying and what friends were paying.
Right. So somebody has to pay. And I guess in this case we're all paying, and that's a choice that the government made. And on June the 7th. The people of this province will be asked to either validate or reject those choices.
Sure.
So we have, we're expecting the economy, the GDP, to grow on average 1.9% over the 4 years from 2018 to 2021. Best information we could find is that the debt to GDP ratio, which is kind of the standard by which these things are measured, Ontario's coming in at about 38%. It's certainly better than, say, some of the European countries who are well into the 3 digits on that ratio, but we need to remember that Ontario is not a country. It's a subnational jurisdiction, and as the folks on the PC side like to remind us, we're the largest subnational debtor in the world now.
Well, and that the debt to GDP ratio is obviously, with a deficit coming into place, it's growing again instead of going down. But at about 38%, that's about 1% less than the peak that it was during the recession. And based on the government's numbers, it will peak below 39% as the ratio, which again would put it below where it was at its peak during the 2008 Great Recession.